latest Sunday school lesson from this Chronological Study Bible. It has been interesting. It seems like for some that we've been in Genesis forever, and we have, and we will still be in there a little while. But Genesis is a long book. But then some will move more quickly. This has a lot of detail, I think, is the main thing about Genesis. It has a lot of detail. And so today I want to start, we talked about this last Sunday, but in chapter 19, it was about Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed, and we talked about that. And then we briefly talked about Lot and his daughters. I just want to kind of go back and remind you what happened there. So Lot and his daughters had to move to Zor, which stands for small town, small village. And remember that the angel took them all by the hands and led them out, and that Lot's wife turned around and was turned into a pillar of salt. We all have learned that since little Sunday school kids. And so they got there, and then his daughters, now remember, these are the daughters that Lot said he was going to give to the people instead of taking the angels, because they were guests under his roof, and he felt like he should protect them. So remember, he offered them up. Remember that. Now these women said, our father is old and there's no men around here to give us children. Let's get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father. So they did. His two daughters got Lot drunk, and they took advantage of him. and then, guess what? They both got pregnant. And so it says, as we end chapter 19, so both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son, and she named him Moab. He's the father of the Moabites today. The younger daughter also had a son, and she named him Ben-Ami, is the father of the Ammonites. We talked about the Ammonites later going on to kind of take over a lot of area. So now we're at chapter 20. And so chapter 20 is about Abraham and Abimelech. And it's a lot of detail in this chapter, and I'll try to not go through every bit of it, but here's the thing. It said, now Abraham moved on from there into the region from this little town, Zoar, to Negev, and lived between Kadesh and Shur. For a while he stayed in Gerar. And there Abraham said of his wife to Sarah, here we come again. This is going to be number 2. He says, said of his wife Sarah to Abimelech, she is my sister. Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her. But God came to Abimelech in a dream one night and said to him, you are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is a married woman. Now Abimelech had not gone near her, so he said, Lord, would you destroy an innocent nation? Did he not say to me, she's my sister? And didn't she also say he is my brother? I have done this with a clear conscience and clean hands. It didn't say anything about marrying her. It says he took her, remember. And so God said to him in a dream, yes, I know you did this with a clear conscience, and so I've kept you from sinning against me. That is why I did not let you touch her. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure that you and all who belong to you will die. Okay. Early the next morning, Abimelech summoned all his officials, and he told them all that had happened. And they asked, how have I wronged you that you have brought such a great guilt upon me and my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never have been done. And Abimelech asked Abraham, what was your reason for doing this? Now, it's a little interesting here that he goes through this whole thing when God has already told him it won't matter. I've already going to take care of you. But he's going to go through it anyway. And that's something we kind of tend to do. We tend to kind of, no matter what we think God is going to do for us, forgive us, whatever, we still can't quite let that, we're kind of like a dog with a bone. We can't let it go. So he said, what have you done? And then, and then he do it. Abraham replied, I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place. They will kill me because of my wife. So Abraham has judged these people. We're told not to do that. that these people, there is no God in this place. He just got there, remember. There's no God in this place. So he will surely kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother. Daughter of my father, but not of my mother. And she became my wife. And when God had me wander from my father's household, I said to her, this is how you can show your love to me. Everywhere we go, say of me, he is my brother. So this is twice now he's done this. Just lets her go off with these men. It's just unbelievable. I mean, you know. And so then, Abimelech, wherever you like. To Sarah, he said, I'm giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. 1,000 shekels of silver. This is to cover the offense against you before all who are with you. You are completely vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves, so that they could have children again. For the Lord had kept all the women in Abimelech's household from conceiving because of Abraham's wife, Sarah. So he just put a hold on anybody conceiving as long as this mess was going on. Now, here's a couple of questions about this that I think are interesting. One is, he says to Sarah, I'm giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver. 1,000 for giving her, for Sarah, 1,000. How much did Judas get for Jesus' betrayal? 30. Now, you telling me that's how little they thought of that?
Yeah.
Of Jesus? 30. We'll give you 30 to tell us who he is. But Abimelech gave Sarah, Abraham, 1,000 shekels. 1,000 pieces of silver.
Yeah, but we knew him as a crook.
I'm just saying, that's a lot of difference there. One's for the Lord, and anyway, I just think that's...
Yeah.
Now, the second question I have before we go forward is this. Why do you think, and I don't know the answer to this, so why do you think God gives Abraham such huge room to do all this stuff? He's already told him a long time ago, many chapters back, I've made a covenant with you. We've heard the covenant. You're going to be the father of many nations. Sarah will be the mother of many. You know, we've gone through all this. And yet Abraham continues to pawn his wife on these people so he doesn't get killed. If he had faith in God, why would he do that? I mean, Daniel and the lion's den. You know, he had faith.
Yeah. So
why does God let Abraham continue to do all these things and then bail him out? Why does he do that, do you think? Does anybody have any thoughts on that? Because it's a lot.
A little uncertain, perhaps.
Who's a little uncertain?
Abraham.
Of
a
what?
little uncertain of the promise God made to him, perhaps. I mean,
maybe. That could be. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? I mean, he's let him get by with a lot of stuff. Slavery, doing things with his wife, doubting him about his being the father, going to the Hagar, impregnating the slave. Even though that was the accepted practice, God knew that there were going to be 10 commandments come. So that's the thing about all this. This is all going on, and God knows where he's going. We don't know. They didn't know where he was going, but God knew. God knew Moses was going to come down and say, thou shalt not commit adultery. Yes?
Could it be that God is indicating that he has the ability to forgive a lot of these iniquities?
I think that is almost exactly right. I think both of you are right, but I think that God is showing us by reading his word that he has the ability to forgive all iniquities, not just some, but all. You cannot, if you ask for forgiveness, you cannot not be forgiven if it's true in your heart. So I think when we read this, we say the same things you've heard me say all these times. look at what a mess Abraham was. Look at what a mess Peter was. Look at what a mess Saul was. Look at what a mess
David was.
Eve was. Adam and Eve. Their children were a mess. Look at all these people. They did stuff a lot worse than you and I've done. At least it hadn't been in the paper if we've done it. But I'm just saying, you know, God's showing us, as Brian says, that He is a God of mercy. That we're unsure, that we're really, you know, so we protect ourselves a little bit. We look out for ourselves. And also that there is nothing He won't forgive if we are truly penitent and have contrite hearts, which is sort of the center of Lent. So I think that's right. I think all of that is right. So we now move on to, in this Bible, what if you have one of these, it's called the transition. We're moving to a different part, which is the birth of Isaac. So Abraham, in fulfillment of God's promise, Abraham, age 100, fathered Isaac through his wife Sarah, age 90. Sarah's first concern for her new son was for her new son's status. Now, we don't really worry about that in the way that they did, because the hierarchy is not that way. But in those days, because remember, Sarah is the one who sent her husband to father a child by Hagar. Yeah. And now, she acts because she didn't think she'd have a child. Back to what you think, a little unsure. A little, no, it sounds, what are you talking about? Remember, she laughed, and he said, you did laugh. Remember, we heard that last time. Yeah. Now, here we go. She's saying, oh my word, I've sent him over there, and he had a child with Hagar, and now I actually am pregnant, and I'm going to have a child, and it's a son, Isaac. Now, what do I do to make sure that Isaac is the true inheritor and receives what they in those days called the blessing? How do I make sure? Well,
send him away.
Send him away. That's right. That's right. So it says, Ishmael was now 14 years old. Hagar's son was 14 years old when Isaac was born. So it says here, the law provided protection for children born to the second wife. It prohibited the disinheriting of a firstborn son, however, of a slave wife, in the event that the barren upper-class wife should later bear a son. However, the upper-class wife's son would supersede the slave wife's son as the legal firstborn. Furthermore, the slave wife and her children could be offered their freedom, in which case they forfeited their inheritance. Isaac did become Abraham's heir, representing one case in which a younger son received the inheritance and the blessing. Now, we're going to come to this. Now, the Lord was gracious to Sarah. Now we're actually in chapter 21. The Lord was gracious to Sarah, and as he said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised, and it goes on to say, and at 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him, and then Abraham was 100 years old. And Sarah said, God has brought me laughter. Everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse their children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. And then it goes on to say, the child grew and was weaned. And on the day Isaac was weaned, Abraham had a great feast. But Sarah saw that the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham was mocking. And she said to Abraham, get rid of that slave woman and her son. For that woman's son will never share the inheritance with my son Isaac. Okay. So we just read where the law was that they still inherited, but they weren't first. They were the firstborn, but they weren't in prime, they call it primogeniture. It wasn't the first one. So now he says, get rid of that woman and her son, for he will never share, for that woman's son will never share the inheritance with my son Isaac. So from the moment Isaac was born, it says that Sarah was worried about his rights. And now she says to Abraham, yes, I sent you over there. Yes, I know it, but that's tough. I've got this child. Now send them away and get out. So the matter distressed Abraham greatly because it concerned his son, because Ishmael was his true son. But God said to him, do not be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring. Now that sounds generous, sort of, kind of, a little bit.
Maybe.
Not overly so. But that's the way God said it. So early the next morning, Abraham took some food. Listen to this. Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. Well, gosh, he could have sent people with him. He could have sent a cook and food, a wagon. He puts her a sack of food and a wine skin of water, and says, out. So then she went her way and wandered into the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, figured that was coming. When the water skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. And then she sat down about a bow shot away, 50 yards, for she thought, I cannot watch the boy die. So there was no more water. I cannot watch the boy die. And she sat there, she began to sob. God heard the boy crying. God knew the boy was going to cry. Now see, here's where we go back to this stuff we've talked about. God knew all of this was going to happen. Every little bit of this, God already knew. Before these people were created, before the beginning, God knew this was all going to happen. Do you get that in your minds? That we're playing out this scenario, and yet God already knew every bit of it. And that's confusing to me. I will say that's confusing. And she said, what's the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. An angel, so God says, he says, lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation. And God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy as he grew up. He lived in the desert and became an archer. While he was living in the desert of Paran, his mother got a wife for him from Egypt. Which she had to marry. So she got a wife from Egypt. It doesn't say how she got to Egypt. It doesn't say any of this. It just says, So she got a wife from Egypt. So God says he's going to take care of him. He tells Abraham he's going to take care of him. Sarah makes him get rid of him. They go out and he sends them out with this piddly, paltry skin of water and a knapsack out into the desert. That doesn't sound like Abraham, once again, back to your point, has great confidence, but he thinks that God says, I'm going to take care of him. So he says, okay, I will do the minimum I have to do. Isn't that what it sounds like? Doesn't it sound like Abraham said, if God's going to be in charge, I'll do the minimum I need to do to get this thing going. So I'll send him out. Does that sound reasonable? Does to me? I mean, it sounds reasonable if that's what happened. Yeah. Now, today, don't we do that very same thing all the time? We're told, that Father John tells us God's in charge and God's going to take care of us and we just have to believe. So we'll believe and we'll do nothing except wait for God to take care of us. But it doesn't really work that way, does it? No. Come into that in a minute. There's a part of that. We're going to get there. So now we have the Treaty of Beersheba. At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, said to Abraham, God is with you in everything you do. Where did they get that? Because God saves him from all of these horrible decisions he seems to make. And he says, now swear to me here before God that you will not deal falsely with me or my children or my descendants. Show to me in the country where you now reside as a foreigner the same kindness I have shown to you. Abraham said, I swear it. Then Abraham said, I don't know who's done this. You did not tell me, and I heard about it only today. So Abraham brought sheep and cattle and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a treaty. Abraham set apart 7 lambs from the flock, and Abimelech asked Abraham, "What is the meaning of these 7 lambs you have set apart by themselves?" He replied, "Accept these 7 lambs from my hand as a witness that I dug this well." So that place was called Beersheba, because the 2 men swore an oath there. After the treaty had been made at Beersheba, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his forces, returned the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba. They were always planting something. Planted a tree, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time. Here's a picture of it, by the way. If you don't have this Bible, here's a picture of it. Yeah, you see that y'all. This looks very, one of the reasons I didn't go on that trip, it looks very interesting to me, but nonetheless, it is. So now we're in chapter 22. We're in chapter 22. And I'm kind of going through this because we've got a long thing today at the church. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, now this is very famous, we had this Sunday school lesson too. Now we're coming. We didn't know much about this Abimelech business going on. None of us knew a lot about that. But we know about this. He says, take your son, your only son whom you love. Your only son whom you love. He says, take him and go to the region of Moriah, sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Sacrifice of Isaac. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. A donkey and 2 sons, and when he sent Hagar out, he sent her out with a wineskin and a backpack. But now look. So then he says, I stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there, and we will worship, and then we will come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, who had to carry his own wood to be burnt on. Sounds like what?
Jesus and the cross.
Exactly. And he said, they carried the fire, and he carried the fire and the knife. And the 2 of them went on together. Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Abraham, Father, yes, my son, the fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? The fire, Abraham said, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached a place where God had told him, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. He reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him. We've all heard this Sunday school lesson. Abraham, Abraham, here I am. Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld me from your son. Your only son, it says again. Your only son. Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, I swear by myself to Christ, as numerous as the stars in the sky, returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. Now here's a question. Why have we had this God making this same covenant over and over with, what is this, the 3rd or 4th time we've heard this? Because you've done this now, I will make this covenant with you. It was because you've done this. We've done this now 4 times, or 3 or 4. Why are we doing that? Why is God doing this? Why do we keep renewing the covenant? Why does he keep renewing the covenant with Abraham?
Emphasis.
Emphasis? Maybe because we know that God keeps renewing the covenant with us. He hadn't sent his son yet. So he had to renew the covenant. Covenant with his son, we have the new covenant, is something that we renew, and we renew it every time we ask for forgiveness. We renew it when we come and have communion. We renew it constantly. We're constantly renewing our covenant with God, and his covenant with us, really. We have nothing to offer God. So it's God's covenant with us. But in those days, God had to actually renew the covenant, and he did so vocally with these folks. Interesting, I think. So then it talks about, there's a little chapter here, Nahor's sons, and I'm gonna kind of skip over this. The main thing is it talks about Rebecca being born, and it has all these names, and I don't think that's particularly something we need to do that. And so now we're in chapter 23, but let me go back to I think what's the most important part of today's lesson. 22, Abraham tested. I read in another study Bible these words: faith in God to be real must be tested. What do you think? Do you think that for us to really have faith in God, we form that faith through being tested?
Yes.
We form that faith in the fire. What's the thing? On the potter's wheel, there is a preacher I know who, well, he's a black preacher in Dallas, and anyway, his church is called the Potter's Wheel. And he talks a lot of sermons, a lot about, you are still on the potter's wheel. He said, it isn't your job to put others on the potter's wheel. You are on God's potter's wheel. It's not our job. My job is not to put you on the potter's wheel, but God's job is to put me on the potter's wheel and to put you on the potter's wheel until we are a complete thing. And so I think it is true. Faith in God, to be very real, has to be tested. Now, I'm not sure, I know this for a fact. I think you all would all admit that everything you prayed for from God for has not come about. And there's two reasons for that. One is that it's not what God wants for you in your life. So sometimes we need to remember to pray, God, if it is your will. Remember it says in the Lord's Prayer, what does it say? Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. We've talked about how to pray. We talked about it, I think, last week maybe, but we talked about how to pray. We always talk about praying, and we talk about, no, it was another thing I did somewhere else, but it was about, we really don't follow, the disciples said to Jesus, Lord, teach us to pray. And he said, when you pray, say, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We are to praise God first before we ask for things. We want to go in there and say, hey, God, I got this problem and I want you to do this for me. Fix this. Do this. But that's not what Jesus said to do. Jesus said, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Thy will be done. It's hard for me to pray for people to get well when I have to say, if it is your will. But that's because there may be a better plan. Being healed here on this earth, even though that's what we all want, especially when it is not the ultimate thing. Eternal life is the ultimate thing. And I've said this before in sermons, and I'll say it again here. If this turns out to be the ultimate thing, I'm going to be really disappointed. You ought to be really disappointed. If this is as good as it gets, what a time we've wasted. We have to know that there's better than this, and we do know that. It's the hope of eternal life. It's eternal life. And so we have to pray for God's will to be done on earth as it is in heaven. In heaven, there is no yes or no, don't doubt. If you get to heaven, his will be done and you will be forever perfect, made new, happy. That's heaven. On earth, what we have to pray for is his will to be done. And that may or may not coincide with our will, or it may and may not coincide with our will and our time. Sometimes we're Americans, we want it now. But that's not what God, He doesn't work on our time. His time is way different. And so we have to find out those things. And we have to be patient. Wait on the Lord, one of the Psalms says, wait on the Lord to come to us and to do what His will is for us in our lives. I think that's important. I think that's important. Faith in God to be real must be tested. And for us to have faith, we have to show God faith. And to show God faith, we have to say to Him, Thy will be done. God, if it is your will. We know what we want. He knows what we want before we pray. By the way, going back to this concept, God is the creator, and before we were ever placed on this earth, He knows how our lives will move. He knows what decisions we'll make. He knows if our name's in the Lamb's Book of Life, and He will know exactly what we will ask for, and what will befall us, and what we'll need, and how the devil will come to us and come for us. He knows all of that. That's why we have to have faith. Because if we don't, then we're just wasting our time here on Sundays. Without faith, we're just wasting our time. So, I just wanted to spend a little time on that. So now, chapter 23, the death of Sarah. Sarah lived to be 127 years old. She died at Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Abraham went to mourn Sarah and to weep over her. He went with her. She was somewhere else. Whatever, I don't know. Just pointing that out. And then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, I am a foreigner and stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so I can bury my dead. Sir, the Hittites said, listen to us. You're a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you this tomb for burying your dead. Then Abraham rose and bowed down before the people of the land, the Hittites. He said to them, if you're willing to let me bury my dead, then listen to me and intercede with Ephron, my son of Zohar, on my behalf. So he will sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him, and at the end of this field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price as burial site among you. Ephron the Hittite was sitting among the people, and he replied to Abraham in the hearing of the Hittites who had come to the gate of his city. No, my Lord, listen to me. I give you the... Keep saying this. Listen to me. Listen to me. I give you the field, and I give you the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. Contracts in those days, if they involved everybody, were done at the gates of cities, by the way, so that everybody could gather. They could all hear the deal. They didn't write the contracts out. We're not there yet. So they did it vocally, but they did it in front of everyone right there at the gates of the city, or at the entrance to the city. Again, Abraham bowed down before the people of the land. He said to Ephron in their hearing, listen to me, if you will. I will pay the price of the field and accept it from me so I can bury my dead there. If you notice, Abraham's the great arguer. He's kind of like Peter a little bit, isn't he? Remember he said, well, if I can find 50 people, will you still destroy? If you can find 50, I'll 40, 30, 20. Remember, he's bartering with God over how many people. God said, I know he's not going to find, but he really only found one, truth be told, because the daughters were saved, but then look what they did. So, it was sort of a mess. And then he said, and Ephraim said, listen to me, my Lord, the land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between you and me? Bury your dead. Abraham agreed to Ephraim's terms and weighed out for him the price he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver. So now, we've had 1,000 given to Abraham for his wife to get her back, take her back. We now have Abraham paying 400 to Ephraim to have a burial spot, and we've got 30 for Judas to sell out Jesus. Interesting, isn't it? And then he said 400, and so he gave him the 400. So Ephraim's field in Machpelah near Mamre, both the field and cave in it, and all the trees within the borders of the field was deeded to Abraham as his property in the presence of all the Hittites who had come to the gate of the city. What I told you. Afterward, Abraham buried his wife Sarah in the cave in the field of Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron in the land of Canaan. So the field and the cave in it were deeded to Abraham by the Hittites as a burial site. This is basically almost the end. This is the end of Abraham almost. I mean, he'll come up one more time, and then we won't hear about Abraham anymore. So we've almost heard the whole story of the patriarch Abraham, from being Abram, all the things that he's gone to, and all the problems that he's brought in, and all the times God's made covenants with him, and all of that until now. And so now, in the next time, which won't be next Sunday, of course, by the way, but in 2 weeks, we'll start with Isaac and Rebekah. And it's going to talk about them trying to fool Abraham as he's about to die into giving his blessing to the wrong son. And remember, they bring him in and he's blind, and they bring him. That's what we're going to talk about. Abraham's going to be on stage one more time, and then he's going to die, and then we'll move on from him to the next patriarchs. And we are in chapter 23, so we will start at chapter 24, and we'll get through all of the patriarchs here before we are in Epoch 2. Remember. And so we have all the way through Joseph in this book in Genesis. We will go through the story of Joseph. So that's sort of to give you an idea. We are now about to close down on Abraham, and then we will go eventually in the book of Genesis with the story of Joseph. So that's what we have left in this book before we go on to Exodus.
I just noticed something interesting. Yes. It says the 400 shekels of silver according to the weight current among the merchants. So it's like our exchange rate.
Yes.
So because it was worth 400 shekels at that time, it could change. So the 100 could change, the 30 could change.
It could. And there were a lot of years. There were 700 years between the last book of the Old Testament and the first book of the New Testament, the first gospel. 700 years. That's right. But I think what matters, I think that's right. I think what we're trying to say here about the value of these things is, well, no matter what they were, the number indicates the value of what people put on what was happening. One person gave 1,000 shekels to get rid of Sarah because he didn't want God to be after him. And then the next one gives 400 to have a place to bury. And then when it was time for Jesus, it was a small number. It was basically a small number, which is why some theologians say, but it's so far ahead, but for Holy Week, some theologians say one of the reasons that Judas killed himself was not only because he did it to his Lord, but because he realized he had done it for really nothing, for so little, that he said, oh my gosh, I've sold Jesus out for 30 pieces of silver. It wasn't worth it. The 30 pieces were not it. Now whether what he thought was enough, we don't know that. But he was distraught over the fact that not only had he done it, but he had done it so cheaply. And we would like to think that he had regret, not only that he had done it, but that he had not valued the worth of Jesus more. Not for him, but in general, that Jesus was not worth more than that. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll see you a week after Easter.
It's daunting. We're only this far. He said he thought it was going to be a half, and we're thinking more like 5.
Yeah. We did that quite a while already.
It's just a
many weeks have we been at it so far?
They said it was a little warm in here.
I can't remember.
It was warm.
It's hanging out for a long time because we've been at it, now it doesn't seem a big deal to get ready to get here.
Tom's fishing and so on, duties. We're not sick like they normally